Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us for another amazing episode of Recruit Military Live, where today we will be discussing how to unlock your potential by assessing your skills versus your passions for that career success post-military. My name is Gabby Petticrew, and today I'm joined, as always, by my amazing co-host, Raul Torres. How's it going, Raul?
Good morning. How's everyone doing?
Fantastic. Ready to get this started.
Yeah, I'm excited today. Our guest is actually the founder and CEO of a Platinum Resume and Career Services and the Platinum Career Academy. She is a 4-time certified professional resume writer and digital course creator. She's leveraging a 20-year career background in the federal government and corporate positions, and she holds a master's degree in organizational management and a bachelor's degree in business administration. She's a certified trainer, LinkedIn profile writer, author, speaker, and workshop facilitator. And as an Army brat of a Vietnam veteran and a military spouse herself, she believes in building on her success and paying it forward by empowering military spouses to start and scale their own career businesses. So without further ado, please join us in giving a warm welcome to Kara Varner. Very excited to have you on today, Kara. I wish I met you as I was transitioning out. So I'm really happy to have you on today so you can, spread your knowledge to those who are and those who are already in the civilian side looking for new jobs. So.
Well, thank you. I'm so excited to be here, and I really appreciate this sentiment. It's exciting, and I can't wait to get started.
No, definitely. I was just telling Raul, I usually have coffee right before we get on here, and you need a shot of espresso just to get through your line of accomplishments. So we're so excited. So we're so excited to have you on today and to get some, interaction with our amazing audience. And today, we are discussing, first and foremost, assessing your passions versus your skills. And I know we talked a little bit yesterday about how, it depends on where you are in your transition journey, whether you're, a year or so out from making that transition, or if you're right at the cusp of getting out, or you've been out already. Still assessing your skill sets versus your passions can honestly be done at any point of that journey, but it is an important step in that transition process to do in order to figure out, where you're going to end up in that post-military career.
Definitely. And I think it's important to understand and kind of distinguish between what skills are and what passion is.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Skills are traits that you've acquired during, experience, military experience, your training, your education. They can be technical skills such as landing a helicopter or computer programming, strategic planning. And then there's soft skills, which are very important nowadays. They've actually kind of taken a front seat, and those are more like communication, time management, public relations, problem solving, things that are a little bit more interpersonal.
Mm-hmm.
So those are what skills are. And passion is kind of what lights you up, what brings you joy, what motivates you, what's going to get you out of bed in the morning, to go to work. So distinguishing between those two is really important to start off with.
And can you talk a little bit more about how that assessing your skills versus your passions, how that can differentiate, as you mentioned, with someone who is assessing that, a year or so within a timely manner before transitioning out and doing so, right as they get out in a more chaotic, transition process.
Definitely. So it's good to start at least 2 years out if you can. Now, obviously, that's not going to happen for everybody. Things change, and you find out that you're getting out sooner than you thought, or you want to retire, sooner than you thought. So there's that to consider. However, if you do have the ability, you want to kind of take an inventory of your skills. So looking at your MOS, your occupational skills that you have, that you've been doing in the military, and then also looking at your passion, what you've always thought about doing, and hoping that the two can align. And I think that the clients that I've worked with, if they've done the pre-work 1 or 2 years ahead of time, sometimes it's a little easier to align your skills with your passion as you're making that transition. However, if you're kind of just on the cusp of, oh, I'm sitting in my Soldier for Life course or my TAPS course, and now I'm out, I'm getting ready to get out and I'm not sure, then sometimes you have to lean a little heavier on your skills. Either way, the military service members have quite a lot of skills and passion to choose from, primarily the skills, things like leadership, work ethic, organization skills. So take an inventory of all your skills that you have. You can get these, from your evaluations. You can talk to mentors that find your work to be excellent. You can think about the things that you enjoy doing, and then start looking at your passion, what it is that you really want to do. Ideally, if you can marry the two and create that fine balance, that's fantastic. And that creates more career satisfaction for you and usually an easier transition. However, keep in mind that you may have to lean a little heavier on your skills as you're making that transition.
Exactly. And is that the advice more so that you would give to someone who maybe doesn't really know where their passion lies? Maybe they've been doing, a specific MOS or job in the military for so long, say, something like administration, and they don't exactly find joy in it, but it's what they were assigned, it was the only MOS left. Is that kind of, lean? What advice would you give to someone who's kind of like unfamiliar, not really in tune with what passion they'd like to pursue outside of the military?
If you're just strictly looking at your passion and saying, okay, now it's the next chapter, what do I want to do? I've been, doing this for 10, 15, 20 years. Yeah. And it was the only MOS left, then definitely, take the time to, again, take inventory of what it is that lights you up. What have you always dreamed about doing? What brings you that joy? What excites you? What motivates you? Because your work satisfaction is going to come from having that excitement and that motivation to be in that position, possibly for a long time. So if you can kind of discover that, and the ways to do that are several. If you have the time, again, and even if you don't, if you can take some, maybe squeeze in a week here if you're kind of on the edge of transitioning. But if you do have a year or so, then take the time to start seeking out mentors, doing informational interviews. And if you don't know what those are basically doing some research about positions and companies that you're looking at moving into. And then maybe they're reaching out on LinkedIn or making that dreaded cold call and reaching out and saying, hey, can I have 10 or 15 minutes of your time, maybe over coffee, to learn more about what you do? It's something that's always interested me. Not asking for a job, just asking for information. So it's an informational interview. And then at that time, you can really see what we call behind the curtain, thinking of the Wizard of Oz or behind the screen. And we talked about, the other day about how things that look golden and kind of, really exciting on the outside, when you dig deep, sometimes those careers aren't quite as exciting as you thought they might be. So getting that knowledge, doing that research, and talking to someone in those positions helps you to kind of realize, okay, this is my passion, or, oh, this is, even more exciting than I thought it would be. Definitely, this is what I want to do. Then there's networking too, of course. You're wanting to do that and network with people that are in the industry and types of positions that you find exciting and interesting and that you think will motivate you. So there's a lot of different ways to go about that. First, making your list of your passions. What is it that you've always wanted to do? Maybe it's cybersecurity, or maybe it's human resources, or being a trainer, and you haven't done that previously. So it's important to get that research to make sure that that is as exciting to you as it may look on the outside.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. And I was just going to put in there, I can absolutely relate. I got out of the Marines in it's been 3 years already, 2021. And I sat there, I don't know, a year, 9 months, 6 months out. I'm probably like 9 months out. And I sat there on the couch like, man, yep, this is happening. We're in the middle of a pandemic. This is going to be an interesting ride. And I kind of did self-assess and thought sports, like what interests me. What am I doing on the couch when I'm not at work? I'm watching basketball games. I'm watching football games. Yeah. I started down that path. I knew I wanted to do marketing. I was like, okay, maybe we can work maybe we can break into sports marketing. Let's see what this is about. Did the informational interviews, went down the whole path. I had everything you mentioned, probably except for your resume writing skills, right? And, went down that road and figured out, yeah, it's hard to start at a even decent salary in the sports field because it's one, so competitive, and two, it's a lot different than people think. The salaries, at least starting out, are like, are tough. So, pivoting from there and kind of staying in the marketing field, I ended up here, which I'm super glad I'm able to help out, veterans just like myself transition out. But yeah, I do think that self-assessment piece of just like listening to yourself and at least going down the road of finding out, do the skills that I have and, my passions, do they align and does it make sense at the end of the day? So yes, if you're out there listening, do the research, sit down, go through LinkedIn to find at least veterans in those companies that you think you might be interested in, and absolutely reach out and do those informational interviews.
Yeah, those informational interviews, it's something that I never really heard too often, even just the phrase while in, but it's something, especially doing these lives with past guests, many people have mentioned, and it's a genius idea and process, just because even going into that interview and wanting to learn more about a specific position within that organization, you then can be told about a whole other, slew of options that you would never think this organization would have available, whether that be IT, in the IT field, in the logistics field, in the supply field. And, you're going there just to learn about, HR or admin, where there's this whole other list of options that match your skill sets that you could be like, oh, well, that employer can say, this may not be an option, but we have A, B, and C that may be a great fit if that's something, looking forward that you could see yourself doing. So those informational interviews can open up a whole other world of opportunities that you didn't even know when just stepping into that 15, 30-minute call,
Totally. You've both hit on quite a few great points. One being the financial piece. Because what you think your salary might be is not necessarily what it will be. Looking at the demographics, are you wanting to relocate? And then what does the job market look at the place that you're looking to relocate to? Or what is the job market where you currently are if you're not going to relocate? So I think you touched on that fantastic, that a lot of these positions may be entry level, especially when you're looking at your passion versus the skill set that maybe you've honed for over, 10, 15, 20 years, that might be a quicker road to employment and quicker or a higher starting salary. And then moving into that and then going, okay, maybe now I have the opportunity to follow my passion. So you want to balance those very carefully. And then also, Gabrielle, you touched on fantastic points too, with once you're inside a company and doing that informational interview, and this is advice that I give to every military client that I work with, don't chase those titles on Indeed and Glassdoor and, clear jobs. Don't chase the titles. Look at the companies where you would like to work. Google the companies, look at their company culture, look at what the employees have to say, look at the salaries that are there and see if that's a good fit for you. And then go to their career page and look at the other opportunities, which you just talked about, that are there also. So when you're doing the informational interview, like you said, they may say, hey, you're not necessarily a right fit for this, or it's not available, but you might be a good fit for this. And the other thing informational interviews do is they give you all those networking contacts. Now you have a networking contact inside of an organization that maybe you didn't know anybody in before.
Yeah,
that's exactly right.
Yeah, that financial piece, I feel like is something that is on the back of the mind of veterans transitioning out. Like it's there, and it doesn't come to the forefront until you start having these conversations. You're like, oh, okay, that is how much you're getting paid, and it vastly changes like your perception of what's going to happen with your salary when you get out. I mean, it happened to me. I was in the DC area. I was in Baltimore. And middle of the pandemic, I put 25, 30 grand over bidding on a house. And they didn't even wink. It was a VA loan. And of course, all the cash is king. So I think a cash offer once, I kind of had to reevaluate. And this remote position opened up for me. And that just opened up, the country. It's like, okay, I can work from anywhere now. I can kind of, figure out what's a better cost of living. So the finances is nothing to look over. And maybe taking a look at remote positions as an option as well, since we're seeing more of that today. So finances were very important for me, and as I'm sure it will be everyone else's priority as well when they get out.
Especially when you got two little rugrats running around in a whole household to keep. You're like, yeah, I definitely need to make sure that I'm not only continuing the ability to take care of myself, but also my kids as well. So when it comes to maybe finding what you feel is that perfect position with that perfect organization that aligns with, the company culture you're looking for, the room for growth, all of that goodness. Now we're getting into the nitty gritty of resume writing, which happens to be, one of your amazing areas of expertise. Thank goodness, because I think it's one of the most dreaded things. I think anyone, but especially transitioning military individuals, because not only are they having to now think about me, which is very uncomfy for a lot of us because it's always team, and mission. Well, now the mission is and your longevity in your, post-military career. So where would you gave some great, pieces of advice to us prior to this. Where would you advise military members to first get their, a grasp on the skill sets and what they bring to the table? Because it is difficult, I feel, for a lot of military members to then be like, what am I good at? Like, what do I have to brag about myself on paper that the civilian employers are going to want?
Right. Well, we talked a little bit about that there are so many fantastic skills that military bring to the table that I think sometimes they underestimate themselves in terms of things like their work ethic and leadership and problem solving and things, putting out fires, things that they do, every single day that are very valuable to civilian employers inside the workforce. But to get started, I think all of us have touched on basically that key word of assessment, whether it be soul searching, taking inventory, creating an assessment. There's plenty of assessments online. I do assessments with clients, talking with them about the skills that they want to utilize, because some skills you don't want to utilize coming out of the military, but there's quite a few that I am able to identify that sometimes the service member doesn't think, oh, that doesn't mean much, but actually it really does to a civilian employer. It can be simple things like the fact that you're prompt and, you're detail oriented and you have this strategic mind and critical thinking. So looking at that assessment, we've talked about several different, because we looked at the passion assessment, and then Raul, we talked on, the financial assessment. So taking all those assessments and then putting all of those together and looking at yourself as a holistic candidate rather than just, I only do this or I only do that, I think is very important. And there's career counselors, there's career coaches. I do some of that as well. Reaching out in those arenas to get a little bit of help too, to talk through. I think sometimes I listen a lot. I'm talking a lot today, but when I'm working with clients, I listen, do that active listening. So sometimes you just need somebody who can do that, kind of mirror it back to you and say, hey, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? So having that time on your side to do those kinds of assessments and kind of, interpersonal work is very important to having a successful career transition. And I'll touch on the resume writing in just a minute. Wanted to answer that.
You mentioned something that, hasn't really, we talk about it during like the interview process, but not really so much on the resume writing process. And it's having that third party, that external perspective on a resume. One of the great pieces of advice that you had mentioned to us earlier was getting your military evals, those fit reps, those annual assessments, those, biannual assessments that list out, your accomplishments literally on paper, that have the numbers there that show what you've accomplished, what you're good at, what your area of expertise is. And that could be a great, launching pad for pulling those hard skills and soft skills and putting them onto paper. I think where, a lot of individuals in the military may have trouble with is translating that from, military jargon to now, civilian employer friendly, for sure.
Oh, definitely. I'm one of the only agencies that asks for your evals. And I think Raul giving that wonderful background intro of all the detail. That's one of the reasons why I do that. And all those evals are like, there's what I call nuggets of gold in there that sometimes military members don't see, or it's just overwhelming. There's just so much information and you're like, what do they want to see? What should I put on the resume? And the key primarily for resumes is twofold. One thing is to remember your resume is actually a marketing document. It's meant to get you an interview. It's not necessarily meant to get you a job. The federal resume is meant to get you a job, even though they do way more interviews than they used to. That's why those are very detailed and specifically written, and you have to give more key examples. But going back to the civilian resume, it has to have several components. It has to be aesthetically pleasing, it has to pop off the page, but it also has to give fantastic information. So when you're looking at your evals, look at that quantifiable data. Those numbers are very key. How many people did you train? How many people did you lead? How many missions did you go on? Were you 1 out of 10 in the class, or 1 out of 10 chosen, or were you selected for those elite coveted positions? Really get into the details of those evals to see what kind of sets you apart from the competition, because that is the information that's vital to go on your resume. Resumes are sterile documents. There's usually no pronouns in there. So it's not a lot of I. It has to be written more achievement driven. And then also resumes are meant to capture your attention in the first 1/2 to 3/4 of the first page. So immediately they have to know who you are, what you do, and why they have your resume. So do not stick profile or summary on the top of your resume. Brand yourself. Are you a human resource management specialist? Are you director of operations? Are you VP? Make sure there's some sort of branding on there. Otherwise, it's spaghetti at the wall. You're just screaming, I want a job. You tell me what you think I'm good at.
Yeah, it's a very vivid image for sure. And it can be, just like soup sandwich, where you're just like throwing information and hoping, kind of the spray and pray method when it comes to just information about yourself. And I know this topic is a huge one within the military community. So as a reminder to our audience, if you have any questions, or if you're in the process right now of translating your resume, feel free to drop a question at any time, because you have the gold mine of an expert right here with us today that can answer those questions. Now, there's something that I think a lot of people do have a burning question, and that's in regards to the resume application, like selection process. And you kind of just gave us, a wave top explanation of what that's like. And it was even eye-opening to myself as well. So would you mind like reviewing that? Because it was very informational.
Of course, yes. So it's highly competitive in the workforce. And the reason why specifically is technology. Anyone, anywhere in the world can apply for any job. It used to be that you only applied for jobs if you lived in that commuting area, or you really, really, really were going to move there. Now, anyone can apply for jobs. So the way that the process works is a lot different, and it gets convoluted. So when you put, you hit submit, and your resume goes through technology into what we call the applicant tracking system. And there are many, many different kinds of applicant tracking systems. And they have algorithms that sometimes HR can actually program. Must have 15 years of HR experience, must live in, Iowa, or specific zip codes, or specific keywords that must be in that resume 5 or 10 or 15 times. But basically, it's going into that applicant tracking system. And some people think, okay, I have to have all those special keywords, which yes, you do in some instances. But primarily, you do have to meet the qualifications of the job. So just looking to align your resume with those qualifications is a great start. Going into the applicant tracking system, let's give an example of 1,000 resumes that go into that ATS system. And that's not unusual. 400 kick out, say those are viable resumes that say, hey, these resumes met your algorithm that you plugged in. Now you've got the HR generalist, sometimes the HR director, depending on the size of the corporation. And that's where the resumes are going across the screen. So that's where what I talked about aesthetically, it needs to pop out. A lot of black and white resumes, it's just like, okay, next, spelling errors, next, profile. Oh, you don't know what you want to do, next. So yeah. So that's where the HR generalist usually is. The HR generalist is looking at the resumes going, okay, my boss wants 20 of these before I go to lunch. That's not unusual. How do they parse you out? Like I said, next. So then when they have the credentials and they see, the aesthetics and it all comes together, then they choose those 10 or 20 resumes to move forward to the boss. This is often what you hear about, that 9 to 12 second read. You guys have probably heard that, to death, is your resume only gets 9 to 12 seconds. That's where that part comes in. 9 to 12 seconds to say next.
Yeah.
Now at the hiring manager stage, that's where they read the resumes. And that's because they actually have to have a knowledgeable conversation with you about the resume and your career history. So that's where your accomplishments, that's where that quantifiable data, that's where what can you do for me, results-oriented outcomes, that's where that part of the resume really starts to sing. And they're going, oh, I need to talk to this person. And we didn't even touch on cover letters. Cover letters can also make the difference between getting an interview or not getting an interview. And that's because the cover letter is where you actually put in your excitement about working at that company. Oh, you mentioned my company. Oh, you know about our press releases inside the cover letter. Oh, I do need to talk to you because you really want to work here. So it's a lot that goes into resume writing, way more than used to. And that's why sometimes it seems so difficult and overwhelming. But it's basically just kind of boiling it down to quantifiable data and the fact that it's a marketing document. And then it may take, 3 or 6 months to find that great alignment between your skills and your passion.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned something yesterday within that first, 9 to 12 seconds, you want that whoever within that process is reading your resume to know who you are, what you do, and why you should work for them, why you should be selected. And I thought that was a great piece. Like within, that first quarter of the page or whatever it is, those 3 things need to stand out to that individual reading your resume.
Yes, we call that above the fold. So if you take your resume and you fold it in half, does that information relay to the hiring manager, to the, HR, to the recruiter right away? Because, for instance, let me give you a quick example. Education. I put education on the last page, where the education that you have, where you went, maybe GPA if you're a college graduate, courses, things like that. But I also stick it on the front page. And everybody's like, why is it on the front page? Because they may not read the second page. They may not get to it. Yeah, especially if you have advanced education, if you have an MBA or a PMP certification, or you have Security Plus, software certifications and things like that. Don't assume that they're going to read your entire resume all the way down to the last line, because when they're first doing that parsing process, most likely they're not.
Yeah, these are some great points. I mean, you're the expert that we need to hear this from, because I promise you, getting out. I feel like you could sit in webinars, unless you get one-on-one kind of help specific to like a job, specific to like you as a person. It is kind of tough to perfect that resume and get all these little tidbits. So yeah, no, we appreciate hearing these things. Again, where were you when I was transitioning out, trying to match my resume to the job description? So
I was here. I didn't find you though.
Like, I've been here the whole time. It just goes back to that wonderful saying, you don't know what you don't know. And that's why, we put on these interviews and these lives, because there's so many individuals out there who are struggling during the transition process, whether they are a military spouse, whether they're right on the cusp of transitioning, they're preparing early, or they're a veteran already. It's individuals like you, resources like what you have to offer that are out there that they're just unaware of. So wrapping up, do you have anything on the forefront of your mind, some just great last parting words for individuals who are about to make that transition process and are just like have chaos brewing in their mind and paranoia and anxiety?
I think there's a couple of different things. One is, it's not too early to start preparing. 10 years out, 5 years out, 2 years out, start preparing, start thinking about that transition and what it's going to look like. There may be, we didn't touch on, gaps in skills. So if you have some gaps in skills, this might be the time to start taking, getting additional certifications or getting additional education, or saying, okay, you know what, I'm going to finish that bachelor's degree before I get out. So taking that time to assess those as well, to see if there's any gaps that you can start to fill in before you make that transition, I think is really vital. And the military, all branches primarily, have fantastic resources. They really do. And you touched on it a little bit, that sometimes it's mass quantity. And so there's not that individualized, personalized attention that a lot of service members could benefit from. And so if there's a career counselor or someone like myself that you can reach out to and just start to bounce things off of them. I work with clients that aren't ready to start writing their resume, but they just want to talk, and ask some questions and find out some things prior to actually, getting the resume going in a year or so and making that transition. So the key word there would be preparation, assessments of your skills, your passion, your finances, the decision-making process that you want to go through. And then also reaching out. It's never too early to start. And the confidence level too, a little bit, you talked about, scary, when it gets scary. Having someone that can just kind of listen and say, you know what, you got this.
Oh, yeah. It makes a world of difference, for sure.
It does. It's huge. I say that to a lot of clients. Okay. Or, we're working together. It's like, okay, I got you. We're going to go through this together. Challenges that you have, we're going to talk about those and we're going to work through them.
And speaking of reaching out, where can members of the military community reach out to you to, utilize your amazing resources and tap into, their potential?
Oh, you guys have been wonderful. Thank you. You can definitely connect with me on LinkedIn. So Kara Varner or A Platinum Resume. My website is www.aplatinumresume.com. On there, you can get a free resource, a 3-page interview tip sheet. And then also you can just hit contact us and it comes right to me. Phone numbers listed there as well. So there's many different ways that you can reach me, or just Google my name or Google A Platinum Resume and you'll find me right away. I'm very highly referred within the military, within especially different branches. So there may be someone that you already know that has worked with me. So that's a great testimonial as well. But yeah, those are the primary ways that you can reach out. And military is my heart. I would love to work with anyone who's, ready or just starting to kind of feel like that process might be coming up for them.
For those out there listening, do not pass up this opportunity. Please go reach out. You have someone in front of you who knows exactly what she's doing and works with the military. So go ahead and connect.
Well, thank you again so much, Kara, for joining us today and imparting. I always say this, but I always leave our lives learning something new, if not just meeting an amazing individual, but learning something new that I could pass on, maybe applicable to myself or pass on to military members that I personally know. So thank you so much again for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been wonderful. You guys are amazing.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on.
All right. And thank you, everyone, for joining us for today's episode of Recruit Military Live. And we will see you next time. Have a good one.
See ya.